Hello, how are you all? So, critical race theory, CRT, has made it back in the headlines over the past 24 hours because of some executive orders that Biden signed his first day in office, which was yesterday. So, that is what we are going to talk about in this video. I'll read you what's going on with that, why it's important not to conflate CRT with diversity training, and give you my opinion on everything at the end. But first, I was having fun starting these with some random tweets that I have just found on the internet, which have nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but I just find them really funny. And this was a person on Twitter that was responding to the new day that is now under this new administration. This individual can finally sleep, and her name is Melanie, and she has a check mark on Twitter. And this appears to be the sentiment with a lot of members of media right now. You're seeing these fluff pieces. You're seeing people say, Biden is in office now. Everything is daisies and rosies and kumbaya now. That's sort of the sentiment you're seeing online. And if you watched my last video, I said that was going to happen. I think it's going to happen for the next few months until they realize that, oh my gosh, everything isn't Trump's fault. What? But she said on Twitter, no more waking at 3 a.m. full of existential dread. Tonight we sleep like we used to when we were 5, and we fell asleep in the back seat of a car knowing that Dad was in charge and nothing bad could happen. Good night, America. That's what Melanie said. I don't know about you, but having Biden driving that car, I feel nothing but safe and secure. But Konstantin Kizin, this individual on Twitter, had this response to her, which was perfect. He said, "This is what a lot of the relief at the election of Joe Biden is about. People with self-induced mental illness who are finally liberated from the symptoms they gave themselves. Genuinely pleased for them, but it's no way to choose a president." Hilarious. And doesn't that remind you of, I'm going to read this Scott Adams tweet. I read it in, I think, yesterday or in a different video, but this talks exactly, or he explains exactly what this is. He said, Trump implements a policy that has obvious national security benefits. CNN reports it as white supremacism, not national defense. The country becomes more divided. CNN blames Trump for dividing the country. The public accepts this uncritically because it was on the news. I love that. I think that's exactly what's been happening for the past few years. But let's talk about critical race theory. And this is actually, interestingly, we were just talking about that. This is another thing where it is very important when we are talking about critical race theory to differentiate that between diversity. Diversity training, and I'm sure if you're an adult, you've had a job or you've gone to school, you have had some sort of diversity training in your lifetime. I've had it at every single job I've ever had since I started working, and it's fine. Diversity training teaches you to treat everybody the same and to not discriminate against people and to be accepting of all peoples, and I fully welcome it. It's completely fine. Critical race theory is in fact very different. It's based in Marxism, and it teaches you that if your skin is one color, you are inherently an oppressor, and if your skin is another color, you are the oppressed. And it is based on this whole systemic racism and all of that stuff. And the reason this is an issue is because it goes completely against the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which says, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is a landmark civil rights and labor law in the United States that outlaws discrimination based on race, color, religion, sexual or sex, national origin, and later sexual orientation and gender identity, which the latter of all of those was just recently added, I believe, this past year. But that is the criticism of CRT, is that it discriminates based on race, and a lot of people that criticize CRT actually argue that it causes even more racism and it causes even more segregation and more poison to the conversation of race, and it's actually harming. The reason I say you have to differentiate the two is because the people, what happened earlier, or what happened yesterday, was this is why it's back in the news. So as we all know, Biden, one of the first things he did when he got in office is he signed a stack of executive orders. Most of them are just reversing everything that the Trump administration did. And one of them, the topic of this, is Donald Trump made an executive order banning CRT and federal government agencies. And what the leftist media will try to do is to tell you that he was banning diversity training, which that's not at all what it was. He was banning CRT. I want to read you this article that came out in the Daily Wire today and give you a few arguments against critical race theory. This actually came out in response to Biden signing this executive order reversing the ban of CRT in federal government agencies. So this is the answer. Megyn Kelly cheers formation of legal group fighting CRT. On Wednesday evening, after Joe Biden had sworn in earlier in the day as President of the United States, Discovery Institute researcher Christopher Rufo, who has done a lot of work for months exposing the growing and pervasive use of CRT in institutions and in education, announced he was forming a coalition of legal foundations and attorneys to fight against the use of CRT. Rufo, noting that Biden announced he would end the Trump administration's 1776 Commission, which was created to fight against the implementation of CRT, tweeted, "Today, President Biden doubled down on CRT and the federal government. In response, I am announcing a new coalition of legal foundations and private attorneys that will wage relentless legal warfare against CRT and America's institutions. The fight is on." And Megyn Kelly is a supporter of this, and she tweeted this out. "This is the answer, the law. These indoctrination sessions are unlawful. Studies have shown they create more, not less, racism. Good for you." So that is the argument, that in fact creates more and it doesn't make less. And I'm going to read you just the first part of this release that was put out talking about their argument against CRT and why they're fighting. So it says, "Stop CRT, announcing a new coalition to fight CRT in the courts and win." Seattle, Washington. Today, President Biden rescinded the Trump executive order banning CRT training programs for the federal government. CRT is a grave threat to the American way of life. It divides Americans by race and traffics it under the pernicious concepts of race essentialism, racial stereotyping, and race-based segregation, all under a false pursuit of social justice. CRT training programs have become commonplace in academia, government, and corporate life, where they have sought to advance the ideology through cult-like indoctrination, intimidation, and harassment. It's time to fight back. So, if you continue reading, he explains what the end goal is. They are going to be representing a lot of people that have grievances against CRT in hopes that one of these cases will make it all the way to the Supreme Court and they will have a historical Supreme Court ruling. So that is what their goal with this entire coalition is. And I'll give you my opinion on CRT, and I really thought about this last night. We've seen stories, I'm sure you've seen them pop up, where some of this stuff is being taught as soon as elementary school. And I think about it. I think about if I would have been taught this stuff at such a young age. If you come at me with this now, I'm just, get away. I've had life experience. I have common sense. I know myself. I want nothing to do with any of this. But if you would have taught this to me when I was really young, when I was figuring out the world, when I was figuring out how to have relationships with people and what the world around me was and how to navigate it, I would have been completely indoctrinated. And I try to think, knowing my personality, how this would have affected my interactions with people that have a different skin color than me if I was taught that early that I was an oppressor and that I was inherently racist solely based on the color of my skin and that there was nothing I could do about that, how would that make me act? And I think about my personality. I'm a really nice person, almost too nice. If you would have told me that so young, I would have felt terrible. I would have lived my life constantly feeling guilty. Then I would, anytime I would interact with someone of a different color, I could see myself like overcompensating because I've been indoctrinated to think that I'm a terrible person, and I'm just trying to overcompensate all the time to prove that I'm not, and to prove that I am worth being on this earth and that I am not a terrible person. And it just is evil, and that's offensive. Nobody wants to feel like a victim, and nobody wants to feel like an oppressor. I don't see how that's moving anything forward, and that's my opinion on CRT. And again, all for diversity training. I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. I've had tons of diversity training in my lifetime. I've never had a grievance with it. I've never had an issue with it. If anything, it's boring at this point. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on everything, and I will see you later. Bye.